In this video, I'll walk through how to get started with the Malloy VS Code extension. I'll cover downloading and installing the extension, connecting a database, finding and using some of our example models to get familiar with the language, and then creating a file to point to your own data set and get started with your own data. I'm starting out just in VS Code, nothing really set up here yet. I'll go to this extensions tab on the left, and I'll search for Malloy in the marketplace. Click install, and we should be ready to go. If I go to this Malloy icon that now appears on the left column and click Edit Connections, this is where I can connect my database. Currently, we support both Postgres and BigQuery, and you can provide any name you like here, just something you want to refer to this connection in your models, and then all your credentials there. I'm going to connect a BigQuery database, and I'm going to use the name BigQuery because I only plan to have one. And I'm going to leave these optional fields blank. I've connected to BigQuery with the G-Cloud CLI. If you want to if you want to create a service account, connect with that instead, you can certainly do so. I'll click test and success, make sure to save. And now we can see that this connection is set up here and ready to go. Let's jump back to this tab, which you can find again just by going to this extensions area and look at Malloy. This includes a README and introduction about Malloy. So we'll have syntax examples, how to install the extension, different ways to authenticate to your database, community. But what I'm scrolling down here for is our documentation. So this is where you can get started, where you can learn about the language and syntax and everything. A really helpful place is to start with this Malloy Quick Start. This is a walkthrough on a public table that we make available so that you can get familiar with the syntax before you start playing on your own. But what I'm actually going to point to for this example is this flights database. We have an example model down at the bottom here of this page, as well as for these other 4 examples. I'm just going to copy the model right out of here, and I'm going to put this in VS Code to get me started. So go back over here. Into my Explorer, we'll open a new file, paste that in and save it. And I think we'll just call this faa.malloy. I'm saving to my desktop. You can save this anywhere you want. The important thing is that you have a .malloy extension there. Press save, and we can see now this is correctly colorizing the Malloy code. And we also see these little code lenses appearing on all these queries and dashboards and things that we have saved in here. So just for my initial test to make sure that worked, I'm going to run one of these queries in here. Just press render. And we should see this pop open a table. So there's that. You can also hit run if you just want to see the JSON appear. We also have a visualization tool available. We'll have that in our documentation on how you can get styles set up so you can see that nicely. Now, if you want to see the SQL, click Terminal, New Terminal, Output, and go to Malloy. And this will allow you to see the exact SQL that's being run against the database. You could take this, you could run it in the SQL console anywhere else. And just follow along with happening. So I'll keep this open. I think it's really helpful to see the SQL that is being run. So that's kind of how to go and grab some examples from our documentation. Again, those are all built on public data sets, so you'll be able to play with them and follow along and change them locally if you want to and make it your own. But let's go over how you would create something completely from scratch. So I'm going to create a new file. And I'm just going to save this again as .malloy. I think in this case I'll call it demo.malloy. Save that again to my desktop. And there's a couple different ways that I can start querying. What I'm going to do is just run a one-off query. So I'll say query, and I'm going to tell it first the source. So Malloy queries always lead with the source. And in this case, it's Malloy data.faa, and I'm going to use the same flights table that model that we grabbed was based on, actually. So this is the function to tell it the source is that table. This arrow separates the source from the transformation. I'll open up a curly brace, and now I'm going to tell it what I want it to actually do here. So if I just want to take an aggregate, maybe we want to see a flight count, the name comes first, and then I give the definition. So in this case, the flight count is count. I find this a lot easier to read than SQL, where you have to fish around for where you've actually named things. Okay, nice and simple. We can see what that's generated. Now, if I want to group this by something, we'll group by carrier. I know that's in my table, and we'll run that. Pretty straightforward. So now let's go about how we would actually turn this into a model and something that we can reuse. So what I'm going to do is hit Explore. So this defines a table that I can run queries from. And I'm going to name that flights is, and I'm just going to copy what I wrote here for table. It's the exact same thing. Flights is that. All right. And now when I query against that, I can actually just say flights, render and run, exact same thing. The other benefit that I get from having defined this as an explorer is if I go now back to my Malloy tab, I can actually see the schema of this table defined in here. So I can see all the fields and their types. So I can see what I'm working with. One more thing that we can do here just to make our lives easier in the future, if I want to define measures and dimensions and joins and everything, that goes into this explore definition. So just for a simple example, maybe I want to take this flight count definition, move it into a measure, and now I can just reference flight count when I go and query that. We'll actually, if I refresh this schema, now see flight count is a field that exists as far as the Malloy model is concerned. And again, exact same SQL, I can go and run that, and over time I can build out this model and make it more reusable. All right, that's what I want to cover in this video. We'll have more coming with how to get to know the language a little bit and get started. If you have questions, jump into Slack, reach out to us on the repo, which you can get to from extensions here. There's a link to the repository. You can file questions as issues and feature requests, and we're excited to get your feedback. Thank you.